Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
Happy anniversary, baby, got you on my mind. Happy anniversary, baby, got you on my mind.
Welcome back, 17 till the hour. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I'm Jim Blasingame. I am the Small Business Advocate. And we're celebrating 14 years of Steve Moore's membership in our Brain Trust. We knew him when he was at Cato. We knew him when he was at Club for Growth. Now he's got my dream job at the Wall Street Journal and the editorial board there at the Wall Street Journal. And he's the author of a number of books. But we're glad to say that he's been a member of our world for 14 years now. Steve Moore, welcome back and happy anniversary, baby.
Jim, great to be with you for 14 years.
How about that? And thank you for the contribution and for all the great times you've been with us and the information. Steve, I want to talk about the economy for a minute. You're an editorial, an economics writer, I should say, for the Wall Street Journal. The fourth quarter of 2012 came in at like 0.7% growth GDP, as I remember. The first quarter was reset down below 2%. Second quarter of this year, below 2%. 4 years after the 83 recession, the 81-83 recession, the economy was growing at 4 or 5%, and we were putting millions of people to work. Here we are 4 years after the Great Recession, and we're still languishing. What's going on, Steve?
Yeah, it's almost like we're kind of treading water. In fact, for the last 3 quarters, Jim, the economy has grown by about slightly over 1%, and that's pathetic. That's pitiful. We should be growing much faster.
That's almost double dip range, isn't it?
It is. In fact, we almost hit double dip at the end of last year. Now, I think that there's a couple of causes on this. One is Obamacare, as we talked about. It's just a jobs killer, and businesses are terrified of this law. You talk to them every day. Yeah. And don't you get that impression they just hate this law?
We talk to them, but we also poll them. And I will tell you, there is no sector. I'm not speaking for all small business owners, but there is no sector, in my opinion, in the country, in the marketplace. I'll put it that way. No sector in the marketplace that is unified against Obamacare as the small business sector.
Yeah, I agree with that. I give a lot of speeches around the country to small businessmen and women who own, stores and franchises, and they tell me the same thing. So that's number one. Number two is, let's not forget, we had a giant tax increase that took place on January 1st. Yep. Remember, the big investment tax hike. And the thing that annoys me so much is we have a president who's, every speech he gives, keeps talking about we need more investment, we need more investment. He's talking about government spending. What we need is more private sector investment, private businesses investing in factories and plants and machinery and computers and expanding their businesses. But, Jim, we've talked about this now for 14 years. It's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. If you tax something, you get less of it.
That's right.
So when we raised the taxes on investment in January, investment took a big hit.
And the opposite of that, if you tax something less, not only do you get more of it, but you get more tax on that, more total tax.
Yeah, a lot of times you do. That's what my book is about. Who's the fairest of them all? Yep. By the way, it's about taxes, wealth, and this issue of inequality. And this gets to the speech that President Obama gave. I guess it was last week when he was talking about. It was all about inequality. And I think the president has his focus all wrong. What he should be focusing on is the word growth. And profits and business expansion, because if you get that, guess what? Poor people, middle-class people, everybody's going to do better. As both Ronald Reagan and John F. Kennedy used to say, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? We're not getting that rising tide. That's what's so disappointing about this measly, anemic 1% growth.
Well, I'll tell you something, Steve. I don't think I've ever seen one single law that had the ability to hold back an entire nation of entrepreneurs like Obamacare has done. Have you ever seen anything like it in your life?
I'm hard-pressed to say that I have, and it's something that everyone knows. Here's the problem, Jim, and you and I have talked about this a lot. almost nobody in Washington, Republican or Democrat, really understands small business.
That's right.
They don't know what it takes to start your own business. They don't know what it takes to have to make
It's
a
the
profit.
hardest job in the world.
It is, and it's I've been a small business owner myself. It is scary sometimes. You take a lot of risks. It's extremely rewarding. When I talk to the young kids, I give a lot of talk on college campuses. I say, start your own business. It's the best thing you'll ever do. But, 2 out of every 3 small businesses fail.
There's another thing.
Fail the first time, there's nothing wrong with that. Start another business.
There's another thing going on right now, Steve, and we polled our audience a week ago about their borrowing practices. 76% of our respondents said they either don't want a loan, they can't get a loan, or they don't think they can get a loan. 3/4 of small businesses are not borrowing money. And Steve, when small business owners aren't borrowing money, they're not growing. That's one of the reasons the economy is not growing right now.
I agree with that entirely. And this is actually one of the kind of conundrums of our economy today. Is you've got interest rates; they've risen by 100 basis points, but they're still as low as they've been in 50 years.
Yep.
And yet, even with these low, the kind of irony is, even with these low interest rates, a lot of small businesses can't get loans. And I attribute that to another horrible law, a lot of these new banking regulations that were put in place that make it very difficult for banks to make the loans.
Dodd-Frank bill.
Yep, exactly.
That's exactly. And that Dodd-Frank bill made collateral damage out of community banks.
Well, it did. And it also, the thing I find so annoying is that the other thing it did, Jim, was it gave a huge competitive advantage to the big banks that got us into the trouble in the first place.
That's exactly.
If it indoctrinated the theory of too big to fail.
That's exactly right. And so, folks, we need different policies coming out of Washington, D.C. If we're going to grow this economy. 10 till, we're going to come right back. When we come back, I'm going to ask Steve, Wall Street and Main Street, what's wrong with that picture? 10 till, stay with us.
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved.